Welcome to Inspiration from Spirit. I'm your host, Lea Chapin. We're here every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, USA. We thank you for joining us today. If you're a first-time listener, we welcome you to Inspiration from Spirit, and we thank all of our loyal listeners who've been with us for the past 10 years and with my show for 7 years plus. I want to thank our new listening audience both in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and the new Suncoast area in Sarasota, Manatee County, and Charlotte County as well here in Florida. Inspiration from Spirit is dedicated to educating, empowering, and awakening humanity to a new level of spiritual understanding that we're all connected and we're all one. My show is a lively dialogue between myself and a myriad of guests. The show is to inspire, uplift, and bring empowering tools for all to use to connect to their true divine essence self. As we all ascend together to uplift this planet, the sharing reminds me of the village where each person comes together with their own spiritual gifts and shares with the village for the healing and the upliftment of that village. With all of humanity networked together, the web of light, love, and peace upon this planet is truly the awakening of the golden age of enlightenment, where peace shall prevail. And my special guest today is Jason Gregory. He was with us back on December 9th, speaking about his book, The Science and Practice of Humility, and we're so delighted to have him back to continue that conversation, and we will be right back.
This is Captain Pierre Meunier with Las Olas Gondola Tours, and you are listening to Radio Ear Network, Fort Lauderdale, Miami.
And welcome back to Inspiration from Spirit. I'm your host, Lea Chapin. We are here today with Jason Gregory. He was with us back in December 9th of 2014, speaking about his new book, The Science and Practice of Humility. This new book was released in the fall of 2014, and he received high praise for the book from the New Life magazine and Common Ground magazine in New York, as well as the San Francisco Life magazine. His book is available on Amazon. And Jason is a teacher, international speaker, specializing in the fields of Eastern and Western philosophy, comparative religion, metaphysics, and ancient cultures. He's the filmmaker of the documentary, The Sacred Sound of Creation, and currently he is residing in India. Welcome to the show, Jason. Thanks for being back with us.
It's a pleasure to be back on, Leah. Good to make contact with you again.
Thank you. I was so excited to have you on my show a couple of months ago that I knew that it was very important for you to be back to speak about your book, The Science and Practice of Humility. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about ego versus humility. But for those listeners who perhaps had not heard your interview with me on December 9th, can you give a premise of your book and why you wrote it?
Mainly why I wrote is because I feel humility is the essence of all spiritual practice, and actually one of the core virtues of a human life, actually. And I feel that in our busy modern life that we all live at the moment, especially in the West, is we're sort of out of touch with that humility, and we're sort of brought up in a very analytically focused world that it's more about success than about coming into harmony with our brothers and sisters, and living in a state of grace, you could say, with each other, instead of, the modern temperament, which is to climb on each other's shoulders to get to, a pinnacle that really doesn't exist. So I feel that in writing this book, it hopefully ignites something within the reader, that they can sense that, when people speak about humility, we're not just talking about humility in the sense of, say, Jesus Christ or Gautama the Buddha. We're talking about humility as, an innate virtue that we all possess. But the problem is it's being cloaked or sort of eclipsed by our social and cultural conditioning.
And when you say the social and cultural conditioning, can you explain to my listening audience what you mean specifically by that?
What I mean specifically by that is, basically our social and cultural conditioning is what sort of builds the framework of what we would call our identity or our ego. And, any sort of role of a culture and a society that, when we are being dictated to by say, a society or a culture, what that does is it molds you to the shape of what that society or that culture needs. It doesn't really promote what's best for you. You know, we can look at our educational system, which is probably the best example of this, because, you know, we're almost forced to put our children into an educational system that teaches them not to harness their innate potentials or what their interests are. What we do is we sort of dictate to them what's needed for the society and culture. And, you know, this sort of goes back into ancient times. You can look at the differences between, say, the outlook of life between Confucius or Lao Tzu. And, you know, Confucius was very socially and culturally minded, more of a collectivist, as opposed to sort of Lao Tzu, who was more of an individualist. And, you know, the problem with the collectivist perspective is that, you know, not all of the social and cultural needs are going to meet each and every individual's expectations. They're not going to resonate. Not each and every individual will resonate with that. And this is because we have sort of misorientated our focus in this matter, because we believe that the society and culture is actually an entity. And, you know, this is the erroneous perception of it, because society and culture is not an entity. Society and culture is us. The individual is actually the society and culture. And this is why we have this sort of this misperception of what reality really is, because we think that the group is something that is alive by itself and dictates to the individual, but the actual group mentality is actually the result of the individual. So, you know, this sort of goes into deep brain psychology and how we've developed our world. So, you know, the social and cultural conditioning that we all have is kind of, it's come from us, but in a sense it's been molded by people who have certain invested interests in mind, and maybe not for the best intentions for all of us. And in the end, it's got to a stage where the social and cultural conditioning is actually a mechanism of itself. And you know, it's not to say that we can destroy that. It's not to say that needs to go away. What needs to be recognized is that the society and the culture is the individual. So basically, if you want a new society and you want a new culture, you have to concentrate on yourself and change yourself and try to, in a sense, shed a lot of the things that separate you from the rest of your brothers and sisters, and then, you know, hopefully a new society and a new culture will be born from that.
And you're currently living in India, but were you born and raised in Australia?
Yeah, born and raised in Australia, yeah.
Okay, and I'm from the USA. So can you share a little bit about what you're seeing in India versus how you were raised in your own culture?
How I see Indian culture as opposed to Australian culture?
Yeah, in terms of how people are practicing in terms of humility and kindness and compassion, and really living in a state of their ego.
Well, yeah, in the East at the moment, there's a lot of Western indoctrination has come in, and, you know, that's not to say, I'm not saying that that's wrong, but what we could say from purely from the Eastern and the Western perspective, and as opposed to different from, say, America, Australia, to, say, India or Nepal or Thailand or one of these places, is that we have, in the West is predominantly brought up on, the Western archetype is analytical. And when you look at the analytical perspective, the Western perspective is always about, it's more of an individual perspective in the sense that it's me against the society, in a sense. Now, in the East, what's different to that, and which goes back into actually ancient Vedic cultures, is when they originally designed the caste system, the caste system was designed originally in the Vedic cultures to sort of shed a lot of those tendencies, which was supposed to, in a sense, spawn holistic thinking. And or I should say holistic perception. And then what basically happened was that, say, if Lea was part of the Brahmin caste, she would be a priest, a magician priest. And if I was part of the laborers, I'd be a Shudra, which is part of the so-called lower caste. But all these were actual roles in the society and the culture. And the thing is, both you and myself would have to identify fully with that role. That was you. And there was no option for you to follow your desires or your innate interests. And this is kind of the paradox between it, because on one side you had your role and you played up to that role, which benefited the society and their culture in a certain context. And that sort of shed a lot of your ego. But at the same time, you had to suppress a lot of your innate desires. Say if you liked music or if you liked playing football or whatever, you had to suppress a lot of these innate desires. And these were this was the paradox between that. And then when we look at the Western side of that, the Western side was very individualistic and promoted following your desires, following your passions, but sort of following them in a very us against the world manner. And so, if anyone would get in the way of me, I would trample over them to achieve success. This was sort of the mentality. So these are the paradoxes of both cultures. So in the East, so sort of what spawned from that was more of a holistic perception as opposed to the analytic perception of the West. So up until thousands of years' time, until where we are speaking right now, you still feel that in India, you still feel that there is that sense of that they are not egotistically driven. They are just doing what they have to do, what's required of them, actually. But again, they're not sort of thinking about. They do still suppress a lot in relation to their religion, in relation to the caste system is still here, as horrific it does seem in some areas of India. But at the same time, when you walk down the street in India, when you go for a tea or you go and have a meal, there's a very it's hard to describe in words. There's a certain energy about it where people they have a sort of innate respect, in general for each other. Obviously there are a few bad apples, but that's the way it is. And as opposed to Australia is very, you could say, it's success driven. It's Australia is sort of they say they have a no worries mate mentality, but that's sort of very, that's kind of more of a, what would you say, like a cultural mantra that people say that's just been happening for a long time. But most people are full of worries. Most people are full of survival mentality because they can't see things in a holistic manner. It's too analytical. It's too my family versus your family, or me versus you. It's a lot of this thinking. It's so ingrained, but at the same time, in the West there is a lot of great things happening as well with with expressions of art, with self-expression. But what I see at the moment actually is a mixture of both East and West, and we're sort of slowly evolving and moving into a sort of a new phase where hopefully the self-expression of the West and the holistic perception of the East will begin to sort of merge, and maybe that's where the new humanity will be born from there.
That's what I was going to just ask you. How do you see this merging, in this year of 2015? Do you really see hope that we can take the best out of both the Eastern and the Western cultures and really merge into that blending? On the second half of the show, I want to talk about sacred union and how we can merge into what we call the energy of divine masculine, divine feminine. Can you tell me a little bit about your perspective of understanding about that sacred union in terms of with your book, blending into the ego with humility, in terms of blending our spirit with the richness, of our identity? We don't want to rob ourselves of who we are, but we really want to move into that, I feel, into that energy of our true spirit that truly guides us.
Oh, definitely. And no, I 100% agree with you. I guess the process of it is not so much that you have to throw away your identity. You know, this is kind of, there is a lot of New Age people out there who tell you to destroy the ego and all of these things. And the fact of the matter is you can't destroy the ego. You know, as soon as you destroy the ego, then, you know, in reality, you wouldn't be in the body. You know, the psychosomatic organism, which is our body and our mind, is there no matter what you want to believe. It's just there. Like, so I think that if you think that you can destroy it, then I think that that's one of the big neurotic perspectives of the New Age. What I think that is the true essence of that, of the spiritual teachings, is the belief in the ego, the belief in the identity. You know, we invest too much belief into it. So, for example, if you were to criticize me, or if you were to say not agree with my perspectives, if I was in reactive self-defense, that's sort of the dead giveaway that I have a belief actually in my identity. But if I was, you know, truly humble and could see things holistically, I'd think, geez, she's got a great point here. You know, like maybe I couldn't see it from that perspective, what you were offering. And, you know, this is sort of the maturing that we have to come into. But again, the only way we can come into that is if we refine our state of consciousness, if we refine our ego, if we loosen our grip on our mind. And, you know, this is kind of like in Zen, they say, have a mind of no deliberation. So, meaning,
say that again, please.
Doesn't stick. So to have a mind of no deliberation. So to have a mind that doesn't stick anywhere. So a mind that's not sticky. So, you know, you and me could walk around, and it's not that we are flimsy and we are effortlessly without discernment. We still have effort and we still have this, but we have this certain grace about us. And this, again, comes from, you know, refining the ego, understanding that, you know, the ego in a sense is me in one perspective, but it's not the entire me. You know, we could say that, you know, Jason Gregory is the writer and the author of The Science and Practice of Humility and speaker on the radio station, but I have to be mindful that, you know, deep down on the entire universe, as each and every one of us is the entire universe. And so the merging, or you know, in Sanskrit they say yug, which is union, and the real meaning of yoga actually is to basically comb out all of our latent tendencies, our habitual ways that are bound and actually driven by our ego, from the belief of our ego, I should say. And in Sanskrit they call this vasanas. They say you need to burn the vasanas out of your psyche. When you burn the vasanas out of your psyche, then you begin to feel that sense of, as you said, the divine spirit, that essence that's within all of us, that, you know, we can't give it a name. We do give it a name. You know, people call it God, people call it spirit, but it's beyond our comprehension. But the thing is that we can know it through feeling it through our being, and actually that's like what you said. It's the marriage, it's the merging, it's the alchemical marriage in Gnosticism and Hermeticism. It's a union of yang and with yin, the unknowable, you know, and this is where grace comes into your life. But, you know, the work has to be done on an individual level, and we can't a lot of people do sort of cop out too sometimes. They say, you know, if you can't destroy the ego, you just get with life and just enjoy it in this manner. And you see people who are off drinking and having drugs and this and that because they think that that's what it's about. But that's actually not what it's about. That's sort of a bit of a cop out. What has to take place is a bit of sincerity. You know, not seriousness, but sincerity. Just being sincere that, look, I'm willing to learn from you guys. I'm willing to learn from the guy down the road who told me I'm an idiot. You know, maybe I am. So, you know, I'm willing to learn this, and I'm willing to lower my ego, to humble it, and you know, the perspective of this is when you continue to refine yourself, the more humble you become, and the more you feel that, you know, I call it in my book the irreducible essence. I think that's probably the best description of what we would call God or Tao in Chinese or Brahman in Sanskrit. I think irreducible essence is the best word, but to feel that irreducible essence is to really let yourself go in a sense and to get out of your way. I feel that, when we talk about the ego, I feel that the biggest thing of the ego is to get in our way. It gets in our way. Like everything that we do, we're actually in our own way. I know that sounds strange, but we are in our own way most of the time, and we can't see truly what's happening in our daily life because of our analytical perspective, and because we get caught in the detail of the dramas of life in general.
Right, of our own fears. And in your book, you have a step-by-step process of helping people understand how to fully liberate themselves. And I never pronounce the word right when you talk about being fully liberated, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that word.
Yeah. Yeah, the Jivan Mukta. The Jivan Mukta is a Sanskrit word that basically refers to a being or just an individual who is fully liberated in this life, and that can mean many things. It doesn't mean that we have to renounce the world and put a loincloth on and you and I are going to just sit and beg on the side of the road. This is sort of more of, what would you say, more of we make an object of those sort of words. What Jivan Mukta really means is that you've renounced the world within your mind, meaning you've renounced the names and the images and everything that you have of the world. Now, again, people will say, yeah, but because of my conditioning, names and images and all of these things still arise in my mind. And this is true, even with the mind of a sage, I admit that. But the problem is, it's kind of like when we look at, like, say, desire. When we talk about desire, a lot of people say desire is the fruit of all suffering. And it's true in one sense. But it's not the actual desire itself. It's what the problem is the satisfaction of the desire. When we continue to satisfy our desires, we get caught in this perpetual cycle of suffering, of samsara. And this is kind of what's really happening within our mind, is that the names and the images and that we have of the world have sort of lost their fruit, and the grip they have on us has sort of been loosened. And this is what happens to a Jivan Mukta. They have renounced those things, those names, those images that they give the world, and they're free. They're free from them, actually. They still come and go, but they watch them like a cloud disappear in a sunny day. They rise and they fall. The thing is, there's no belief in those images or those names that usually fool us into believing that is what reality is. So, that's sort of what Jivan Mukta is completely liberated in that sense. And, this is what I've been trying to teach people, especially in the West, who get sort of lost in terms like Jivan Mukta or sannyasi or these sort of Sanskrit terms that talk about renunciation and so forth and so on. And they have a lot of glamorous images of, say, Sri Ramana Maharishi or Ramakrishna, and they think that we need to be like that. And it's like, no, that was them. That was them. You don't have to be like them. You need, if you want to understand Sri Ramana Maharishi or Ramakrishna, first you have to understand the environment that they grew up in. And, India is completely different to America. It's a completely different environment. So there's a completely different psychology going on in India as opposed to America. So what people need to understand is that renunciation that they did was still a renunciation of mind, but they still just didn't feel the need to be engaged in daily activities as some are. But we are all engaged in daily activities. It doesn't mean that you can't be a Jivan Mukta. You can be. It just means that you've renounced the ideas and that you have of the world. They are sort of washed out of your being, so to speak, so that you can walk freely amongst our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I was going to say that it feels sometimes that we have lost the richness of our soul and our spirit by simply investing in our ego. Sometimes I feel that about myself, even though I have a very strong connection with my higher self and with the spirit beings that I work with. There still seems to be a struggle, for the human being to live, as they say, in the world but not of it. I know it is for me.
Look, Leah, it's for everybody, actually. It's for everybody. It's I think a lot of people fool themselves too, who work a 9-to-5 job and they believe they're an enlightened being and so forth and so on. Yeah, that's all well and good, but I guess the struggle is that people, maybe like yourself, is that there's always a push and a pull between being successful and also being grounded. And we all have this. It's, and it's not just with success. It's about being friends with people. It's about everything. Everything that society and culture demand upon us is sort of the tug on our existence. And we struggle with that because there is that influx and outflux in our daily life. But I think thinkers and such as say Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi of China back in the ancient times they really understood that, especially through Wu Wei, which is a Chinese word which actually means non-forcing or non-doing, or you could say effortless action. That's kind of a state of being that you can be in the world, and like we said, not of it, but the thing is that non-forcing doesn't mean that there is no effort. It doesn't mean that you don't apply effort sometimes. If effort is there, you just do it. The thing is that there's no attachment to the effort. Now, this is the next stage. This is the next stage, that people have got to understand, because like for you and I to have a radio interview today, there needs to be a little bit of effort. I have to check the emails, I have to find the phone number, we have to talk beforehand, and here we are. So there's a little bit of effort, but the thing is that bit of masculine energy is not wrong in itself. It's just what we invest into it. And that's the problem with the world at the moment. We've invested all of our effort into effort, and we've invested nothing into just effortlessness, about just allowing our nervous system to relax, allowing our being just to not consume any external stimuli. We don't give ourselves any time no more, because we have no time. Not even a beggar has time anymore. We've got no time. And so the thing is we need to give ourselves time. We need to really take care of ourselves in this perspective. And so I think is such a...
Jason, I was going to interrupt you for a second. Are you, we need to take a small break. I was wondering if you would just be available for the full hour, because our half an hour has gone so quickly.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, well, let's take a small break, because the half an hour goes so quickly with you. You're so fascinating, and I have so much more to ask you, if you don't mind. We need to take a small break, and we'll come back with that thought that we're sharing. So just let everybody know we're here with Jason Gregory. We're talking about his book, The Science and Practice of Humility. He is such a fascinating guest and just a lovely human being. And I don't know, again, how to pronounce that word again, but I know he is a fully liberated human being, and we'll be right back with Jason Gregory.
Owning or managing a business can be quite a challenge. You'll need to take advantage of every opportunity and be as competitive as possible. How about a team of experts working for you on your schedule? Allow me to introduce Link to Expert. Link to Expert is a clearinghouse of pre-qualified business consulting professionals available to you at any time, anywhere. You can sort through our directory of experts based on your targeted needs, check out the experts' qualifications, and even watch a video to test drive your candidates. From planning planning to marketing, sales, legal, and so much more. We have whatever expert you need all in one place. Find someone to take your business to the next level. Save time, money, and eliminate worry. Team up with Link to Expert. You can find us online at linktoexpert.com. Link to Expert, connecting executives to experts now.
Welcome back to Inspiration from Spirit. I'm your host, Lea Chapin. If you've just joined us, we're here with Jason Gregory. He's talking about his new book, The Science and Practice of Humility. He's joining us from India, so we're so excited to have him with us. He was a guest on my show on December 9th of 2014, and we decided that he was such an important and informative guest that we wanted to have him come back with us. He's a teacher, and he is the author, again, of The Science and Practice of Humility. Today we were speaking about humility versus ego, and before the break, we were simply talking about how we are trying to be fully liberated, and I was talking about how it's difficult to really hold the richness of your spirit and your soul by living in your present state of your ego. And so, Jason, I know I had interrupted you there before that break, but I wanted you to continue your thought on that, if you would.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we were talking about basically the idea of Wu Wei in, China, early China especially. And, they had a lot of problems back in those days, as we do now in the Warring States period, where, there was a lot of political drama and daily life was pretty chaotic, which is pretty comparable to our modern world. So, naturally a lot of people are going to start to think differently in this perspective. And there is like we were speaking about before the break, there is a way of life that we can live where we don't condemn ourselves if we use effort in life, and we don't condemn ourselves if we psychologically harm another person. We don't condemn ourselves overly. We learn to forgive ourselves, and only then can we fully understand our actions, when we learn to understand ourselves fully. So, to get into that sort of that state of Wu Wei is really, it's hard to say. It's kind of a state of nature. It's where, as you see water go down a mountain stream, the water is not attached to any of the contours of the river, but it molds itself to those contours until it reaches the great ocean. But its essence was always water. And this is kind of, us in life. This is why there is sort of, if we want to use the river and the ocean analogy, there's no difference between the journey and the destination of our own life. This is why I always say that the journey is the destination and the destination is the journey. There's no real distinction there. And likewise with effortlessness and using effort, there's no, we shouldn't condemn ourselves for overly using effort, but what you realize in your life is that when you sort of overstretch your hand, you start to struggle. And this is the idea of no force. Like when you don't force, like when you put a key into a door, for example, when you try to force the key, it's never going to open. When you just, you effortlessly jiggle it, the door will open. These are analogies for our own life. And I guess the problem in our modern world is that because of our society, because of our culture and the way we're brought up, is we're brought up to force ourselves upon the world as if the world is going to bend to our knees. And this is kind of the height of the ego's arrogance, actually, is to try and push the universe around. And in the ancient East, they never thought of it this way, because there was always the parable of is the universe happening to you, or are you happening to the universe? And in reality, it's all happening as the same thing at once. So there's no real, you can't define yourself as happening to it or it happening to you, because it's all one thing that's emerging of itself. And this is called sort of the mutual arising of the universe, you could say.
I was going to share something with you. I know you're much younger than I am, but I feel your great wisdom. That's why I have you on my show. because I have so much to learn from you. But I wanted your perspective on this. I am 59 years old now, and I've worked very hard in my life, and I am caught between the fact that I really don't want to work anymore. I want to work only at what brings me pleasure and what brings me joy, and I don't really want to physically do work that doesn't bring me joy anymore. So part of it is I'm getting older, or am I ascending into a new way of being, which we are talking about working effortlessly and finding the same result, because I know that I have been one of those people who my life has force, and push, because I've been a type A personality. So as you speak, it makes me think of where I am in my present moment, that I really just want to be, and then see what emerges from me and my essence from just being.
I think that's a beautiful state of grace that you have there, Lee. It's I know that, like what you said, you're 59 years old. Did you say?
Yes.
Okay. Like I don't think there's anything to do. It has anything to do with your age. I believe that there is that impulse to get into that state, that effortless state, and also to follow naturally what you are here for. It's sometimes it takes a lot of people. Sometimes it takes people in their older age to realize a lot of things like this. But actually, there's a lot of things a lot of spiritual virtues actually in following what you are innately attracted to. Because when you usually follow that, it's kind of like what Joseph Campbell said. It's like the call to adventure, where you sort of go out in the adventure, and the adventure is not all positive. It's rough. It's got storms. You enter the great whale. There's all of these amazing, sometimes even horrific things that you have to go through. But without that journey, without that process, you don't get to higher states of consciousness. You don't understand sort of fully about what you want to do, really, and you don't get good at actually what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
And so, the best example of this is artists. When you look at an artist, most artists who are divinely driven usually don't acquiesce to society and culture. They turn their back on it because they know that, look, I just want to paint, and so I don't care what I'm supposed to do. But what I'm driven to do is paint. If I can't buy milk and bread in the morning, then so be it. And so this sort of action.
I'm giggling.
So this sort of action is very. What would you say? It's kind of like giving yourself over to the cosmos in a sense. You're giving yourself over to something else, and you're trusting that. And I feel like there is a lot of power in trust. I think. When you get into, especially Eastern wisdom, the paradox of unity, or the paradox of oneness, to use a new term, is trust. You cannot know oneness, you cannot know unity of the universe and within yourself unless you trust. And so I guess this is why a lot of artists and a lot of sages and a lot of mystics have this sense of, they call it de in Chinese, this sense of charismatic power, but I don't like to use charismatic power. I like to say it's kind of the merging of the individual and the divine will. It's sort of the virtue of the cosmos. And in Chinese they say this is the Tao that's moving through you, and this is what's happening with you, with the radio station, and following your own bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say. And it's a trial, it's a tribulation, and likewise for myself, it's choosing a path of being a writer and a teacher, and is not an easy process, especially when you don't have a weekly income, and money comes in not that often. It's not. I think Aldous Huxley said it best. He said that the artist or the sage is a poor man but rich in spirit,
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is really reflected in the whole world, especially those who are usually very authentic and very sincere, like yourself. It's not such a, again, you don't have to have material wealth and this and that. What gives you joy in your life is what you do and following it. And that sense of non-conformity, in a sense, is some of the high spiritual aspects, because you're not conforming to what someone else is telling you to do. You're not conforming to what a ghost is telling you to do. And the ghost is actually the society and culture, the entity that we believe is real. And so when you turn your back on that, when you say, look, I'm not going to conform to that because, first of all, I don't understand any of that, then you understand, well, what I do understand is talking about the higher self and having my own radio station and having great discussions. This is what I'm going to follow. And then as soon as you go out on that adventure, then, obviously there's going to be, a certain friction between the old world and the new. But if you can persist and you can have that sense of courage going into the spiritual wilderness, you'll come out gold, and that's the reality of it.
I know. I wanted to share something with you, and we probably have just a few minutes left because always our time goes so fast. Two things I wanted to ask you. First, how did you become so wise? I know that you're probably a treasure with many incarnations, probably as a sage or a wise man. But how did you become so wise in your young life?
Look, I personally, I never think about it that way. But like what yourself and my wife actually, she always says these things to me, and I kind of get a little bit shy in that sort of context. But I don't know. I don't know. Like when I was drawn to a lot of, especially Eastern philosophy and certain aspects, I don't know, there was just a resonance there between it, and I love, this is all I love to do. I love to talk about it. I love to explore the wisdom. I love to meet certain individuals who are into this, and I love to speak to people like yourself. And so I don't know. I guess I don't have a lot of what would you say in life? I don't have a lot of distractions. You can say, like, I haven't owned a TV for almost 10 years. I haven't owned a vehicle for almost 10 years. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things that I haven't had, not because that I really chose it that way, that they were just sort of, they disappeared out of my life. And I guess moving to the East and living, as a humble life, in a sense, a simple life, has sort of given me the foresight, I could say, to see deeply into a lot of things. And, and again, like, I don't know if it's because of my upbringing or whatnot, because of my non-religious background, maybe, I don't know. But I never had really, I've never been too serious about a lot of things in life. So, I don't know, maybe that was to my benefit as well.
I know, I was just going to share with you, if you don't mind. When I worked in mental health for the first 10 years of my career, and I got my master's degree, and I was burnt out listening to people's problems in the traditional mental health system, and then I decided I wanted to go to massage therapy school. Well, I come from a very conservative small town farm community, farm family, and I remember my dad saying, well, how do you think you're going to make a living doing that? Because he was worried about me. And I remember saying to my dad, well, if I don't, then I guess I'll, figure something else out, because I've always been a free spirit. And so I remember he took my first counseling job, and then I wanted to move to a different job. And he'd say, you better stay put, you better stay where you are. Well, that was when I was in my 20s. Now he's in my 50s. So now he's used to me, being just like doing my own thing. But those were the messages, we were talking about in the beginning of the show, cultural conditioning, that I had to fight against, and I didn't conform. And I always had some conflict within me. I don't now, but in my early years, that because I didn't have confidence in myself on some level, even though I would do what I felt led by my spirit and soul to do, but then my ego would say, oh, you probably should do such and such. But my spirit and my soul has always won out, and that's something that I feel proud of with myself, that I trust what I feel called to do. But it is difficult, and that's my point. It's like for some people will not go against their family tradition or grain, in many cultures. And, I had that to fight against, but my poor dad, he's still alive, but I think he finally accepts me now as I laugh.
Yeah. But that's an inspiration. That's an inspiration. It's, I know that, again, your dad, because he doesn't know certain things maybe that you do, but, his best intention was at heart. But the thing is that, again, that was probably the cultural conditioning speaking. And, I had the same with my family. And, you always get that. It's like I meet people in Asia and, say, example, like I went to live in Chiang Mai and I met a man and he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a writer and this and that." And he's like, "Well, you can't do that for too long. That's not going to pay the bills." And it's like, well, what can you say to that sort of individual? So I just said, well, look, this is what I've been doing for a long time. So, what can I tell you? I like to, I go use, what was very powerful for me in this, and what we're talking about was an example like Joseph Campbell, because when he was almost dead, he had a discussion with Bill Moyers, and he asked him, like, how did you become so wise? It's similar to what you asked me before. And he sort of said, look, I see myself really as a maverick, not really a sage or a philosopher, more of a maverick, And he said, the reason why I'm here and why I've lived this life is because I would not submit. That's it. I would not submit. And, that for me, that spoke volumes. And it gave me the inner knowing that, look, I don't have to submit either. I can continue to follow the life of the Spirit and see where it takes me, as you do and as most people are attempting to do these days. And that's the real journey. So, hopefully the listeners, you don't have to quit your job. You don't have to do any of this, but, just explore what you are about. Explore what your nature is. And in Chinese, actually, they have a word for this. It's called Li. And Li means organic pattern. You have an organic pattern. I have an organic pattern. Everybody has an organic pattern. But it's get in touch with that, and that's how you express your nature. And that's what actually brings light to the world. So,
I like that.
More accountants.
Li is
more accountants.
How do you pronounce that again?
Li.
Like,
actually,
Li?
Yeah.
So that's my name.
It's actually, it's actually Li, and that's it's the organic pattern of each and every one of us. It's you could say, actually, Li means in Chinese, it means that, and they use it for reference actually, the markings in jade or the fiber in muscle. So meaning that there's a pattern there. So inside you and inside me, there's an intrinsic pattern that has to come to life. But again, it can only come to life if you know yourself, if you've gone back and you've made contact with that irreducible essence. So, that's the work for us to do. And we.
Oh, I was just going to say my family name is Leanne, but I go by Lee.
That's just beautiful.
Isn't that funny? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I like that. It's like, I followed my organic core, my spirit.
Well, that's it. And if people get back in touch with that, then that's sort of, from the Chinese perspective, that's what sort of brings harmony to the world. And so, the only problem with our world at the moment is not many people understand their own nature, their own Li, their own pattern, because of our conditioning, of who and what we think we are, but we're really not that. So.
Lee, as always, you are. And Louise has arrived on the show. What I wanted, I know we just have a few minutes left, as I said. What is the the thing that you would like to leave with our listening audience today? Just your final message to leave with the listening audience today, Jason. I know you've shared so much, but what is still something you'd like to share?
Just take care of yourself. I mean, and when I mean take care of yourself, take care of the way you treat yourself. Don't bombard yourself with a lot of external stimuli. Give yourself some time to rest, to recuperate. When I say relaxed and recuperate, don't put yourself in front of the television, in front of the computer, and play with your smartphone. Just sit there and be, and just explore yourself. Because once you start to do that, with everything that we talk today will make more sense. And, you know, we need people to really know themselves in this world. We don't need more. We don't need more, actually. We need less. We need, you know, people to understand themselves. And then that's what will make the world rich. So, you know, I'd say come back in and look inside yourself and really, you know, take the non-reactive and humble approach to existence, because that's where the world exists. You know, a lot of people say they want to achieve, they want to get something, but the only way that you get that is when you let it go. So you know, that's what I want to leave with everyone today.
Just simply surrender and go with the flow.
Yeah, that's it. But don't let your ego go with the flow. You know, you really go with the flow. Follow the course of your life. Follow the trail of synchronicity, and you know, entertain the possibilities. And don't be afraid of moving into your fear.
You know, I just want to say, Jason, I really love you. I don't know you, but you are a wonderful soul, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm so glad that you found me, and you've been my guest on my show twice. I just think you're a marvelous soul. So thank you so much for being with me, Jason.
Thank you, Lea, and I can tell you the love's mutual, my friend.
Yeah, you're a great guy. I just have to stop talking about you because I just think you're fabulous. I want everybody to read your book. Let's go ahead and give them information of how they can get your book, and they too can, you know, move into that state of grace that Jason is exuding here and sharing with us. I can feel it. It's palpable, you know, coming. I can feel that from you, Jason, that authenticity and the genuineness and the humility, you know, that's exuding from you. So let's give our listening audience that contact information to buy your book.
Thank you for having me on. It's been an honor, and yeah, it's been a pleasure.
So where can we find your book at, Jason?
Oh, okay. Yeah. You can find my book anyway. My website's jasongregory.org. So you can actually go to the book and films section on my website, and you can find Science and Practice of Humility there with a bunch of links to whatever online store is Amazon or Barnes & Noble or one of these, and Inner Traditions, my publisher, and also it's in most bookshops, but if not, request it in, and I'm hoping to be in the U.S. in spring to lecture, and you know, maybe I'll be down in Fort Lauderdale, who knows, but just keep in touch, and I answer almost all emails, so yeah.
We'll have you back on the show again. So when you come to me, we'll have you back to help promote your tour here.
Oh, for sure. Maybe we can do an in-studio one.
Oh, that would be very exciting. All right, my dear, you have a day or evening, whatever time it is over there in India, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Gregory. We're talking about his book, The Science and Practice of Humility. He is a fabulous human being who really embodies what he is teaching, and as I said, he's a marvelous young man.